Welcome to your favorite new AI podcast called Dear Future. I'm the host, Suki. I am here to bring you the best of AI and art tools, really from the perspective of users and technicians. So the creators of the tools and the users of the tools coming together to talk about what it's like to be in this time and why any of this matters at all.
This idea that everything's been done before can be challenged.
I've been dreaming of a computer like this my whole life.
It really made me think more about how our brains work.
It's not coming from anywhere else. It's only coming from us.
Dear Future.
Today, we're diving in with the founders of PickAxe, an incredible create-your-own chatbot tool that allows users to create their own prompts and send different kinds of chatbots to their friends. We're going to be chatting with them about AI, how they use it, how they want others to use it, and some questions that many of us have had around ethics and creativity. So I am very happy to welcome to the podcast Mike, Gioia, and Ian Eck. Welcome to Dear Future.
Yeah, great to be here.
Good to be here.
And thank you, Echo Bend.
Thanks, Echo Bend, for making this possible. To start out, PickAxe claims to be a hub for prompt engineers and AI pioneers to create and embed GPT-4 apps in their websites with no code in minutes, and a platform for building, managing, and deploying AI prompts. So how would you guys describe your company, and why did you start it?
Totally. Everything you said there is true, but that might be a mouthful. I would just say the company is a way for people to do creative things with AI. When you just have ChatGPT, it's like very broad out of the box. This gives you a way to create very structured experiences with AI that you can then package and share with anybody or put in your website or send as a web link. And some people are doing that for productivity in their companies, but a lot of people are artists doing it for fun or for creativity. So they're using it to help them write or write scripts or create AI necromancy of like bringing back to life famous dead people, creating personas, all sorts of things.
And the way it actually started was out of a fun little art project last fall when Elon Musk had taken over Twitter and it was chaos and everyone was freaking out. And he kept talking about how he wanted to rid Twitter of bots. And we had the idea to make a Twitter only for bots. And we called it Untwitter. And we started making these little Twitter tropes and Twitter characters. And we were using Stable Diffusion to create like the images. And then we were using GPT-3 to write character descriptions and give example tweets. We wanted to make it so that anyone could visit on Twitter and make their own character as well. And then your character would do battle and compete for upvotes. And we had this whole vision that people would want to do that. And then
Was it true? Did they?
No.
We wanted to, but not many other people.
Yeah, we liked it, but no one else cared. But in the process of making that, we realized that like the bot creation tool was itself like a cooler product because it was like, you don't just want to make character bots, you want to make, anything and then be able to embed that wherever you want.
Yeah. To elaborate a little bit more, writing those characters was like writing 1,000-word little essay describing them. And we basically made a tool for writing that and then publishing that and deploying it over and over.
Like baby avatar makers.
Exactly.
And so what brought you to small avatar making? If you can describe where you're at now to making PickAxe with a through line from what you wanted to be as kids. Describe that journey.
As a kid, I just played in my imagination a lot. I was kind of the weird kid running around outside and making explosion noises. No one really knew what I was doing, but I had the movie in my head I was making up. I had characters in it. And I'd combine action figures from different sets. I'd have like a He-Man action figure and the superhero action figures and the military action figures, but I'd combine them all in a game and play with them. And I guess what I like with AI is you can just make anything real. You can create these sort of elaborate characters or worlds. And I think for anyone with a big imagination, AI some people see it as threatening to what they're doing, but I think it's super enhancing. You can do anything, right? And you have the entirety of human literary output as fodder to play with. So I guess I could see it relating to it that way.
So you had this very big imagination and then found yourself in this place now where you're going to create the kinds of characters that you would want to engage with in your imagination. How did you get into building a tool that allowed other people to do that? Did you go to school for engineering? Did you go to school for writing? Like, how did you technically get into this situation?
That's a longer story, but in the short of it is I was at Stanford and I was writing English literature. So in school, all I was doing was reading and writing essays about it, but I was doing a lot of like writing of short stories and novels and scripts on the side. Then I was also working at a tech startup. And then I went into Hollywood. I thought that would be like a natural place to go. And I was doing TV writing, but I guess I didn't get enough character creation there, enough imagination. I felt like there were too many boxes around me. And I sort of ended up doing this. And that specific thing on Twitter was what you might call a lonely impulse of delight. I just thought it was fun to mess around with GPT-3. And then that aligned with Ian and Nathaniel also thinking it's fun and wanting to do something with it.
All right, Ian, your turn.
Yeah, I guess growing up, I wanted to be a writer, but I also wanted to be a scientist who made scientific discoveries and just like experimenting. Like I do that a lot with making weird drinks or like soups and stuff. The idea of just hitting shuffle on a thing, like you're not in complete control. You're just like, maybe we'll do this, maybe do this. And maybe it sucks, but maybe you'll discover something new by accident. That's kind of a lazier form of creativity in a way, because you're just throwing things together and seeing if it works, as opposed to like painstakingly doing actual writing, if that makes sense.
But your creative process was more a collaboration with randomness.
Yeah, well, that's what I like. That's like my type of creativity. I'm trying to relate it to what it's like to deal with AI, because AI is like this randomizer pastiche machine. In both cases, whether you're dealing with image generation or text, it's a little bit like you're in the back room of the internet or the collective subconscious, and you're just pressing a shuffle button, literally, but giving it some little stuff.
It's not an exact science at all.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the fun.
So what I love about this is that you're both highly creative people, and in any other context would really be considered on the creative sort of user side of generative AI. And yet you're building this tool that is essentially a portal through which other people get to experience artificial intelligence. And so what has that process been like as the foundationally creative people in literature, in film? What has it been like to turn your brain from specifically like creative endeavors into creating like a system that other people interact with? What's that process been like?
My background after journalism, I faded out of that into product design. I worked for years as a UI designer up in San Francisco, so I did have some basis in that world, but I do think, I don't know, with both design and journalism, it's a little bit like you're half creative, half pragmatist a little bit. You kind of have to wear both hats. And that's, I feel like, a lot of this process. You're like building the tool that you want to use. It's just fun.
I have a similar outlook, maybe a little different. We want to build the tool you want to use, but then you also have to remember several thousand other people are going to use it. The use cases I think are entertaining are not the use cases the majority of people want to use. They all have their own little personal things. Like a big part of what we do is we just talk to all these people using the platform, which is interesting because they're all not exactly normal people. These are like the early adopters who are like very excited about AI, even though it can't entirely do what they want it to do. If you're using AI to write a screenplay, you're mostly disappointed because it can't do that. But you're just like very optimistic and very ambitious about what it can do. It's very interesting to me to just talk to all these people, listen to what they're trying to do, what their lives are like. And I don't actually want to describe myself very much as a creative person as much as like a curious person. I read deeply from the book of humanity, I would say. Like I'm just very curious about people and what their minds are like. And that's what I've always liked in literature. I've been less interested in a great plot than insight into people. And this gives me a lot of insight into people, even though it's a site all about artificial intelligence.
Because I will say in the early days, especially, and still now, we just filled our site with talk with us buttons because we just didn't know what we were doing and what we were building exactly. So we're just like, we just need to talk to these people.
I'd love to hear about some of these use cases. Like I heard some from Nathaniel when I first chatted with him. For context, I learned about you guys when I was looking at new tools. I think I found something through Product Hunt about PickAxe and looked at the site and thought this would be amazing for this documentary I'm working on about the human experience of AI through ChatGPT. I was like, what an amazing way for people who don't really know how to prompt to engage with some of these different tools. And while we didn't end up working with you guys, that was my insight into PickAxe, was like, what a wonderful entry point for people who don't have a lot of experience engaging with prompting AI to be a character, that this sort of offers a very clear portal into that. And so, yeah, I guess when I ended up talking to Nathaniel and hearing about some of these case studies, I was really blown away and I was so excited. I'm curious if you would share some of those case studies or also like uses of the tool and then some of the people that you've met through it. Would love to hear some of these stories and examples.
Oh, yeah, totally. Some of them are maybe not that zany, but they sound colorful. But there's a couple hypnotherapists that want to create guided meditations through it. Then there's this fellow who's generating like plausible futures in the next year, presidential outcomes, economic outcomes. He'll generate like 50 of them. And then he has a second prompt that will look for similar adjectives between them. And for him, it's like his natural language algorithm for predicting the future. He wants to use AI to find common threads among plausible futures. I don't know if there's any science behind that.
We did have some problems early on with just porn addicts, basically. And those were weird because one of the first bots that I made, just as like a joke was this sexy therapist, and they're trained in clinical psychology and Freudian, blah, blah, blah. But at the end, I'm careful to note that also this therapist is in love with you and will try to hook up with you. That
It's
was
like
just
the therapist that tries to come on to you. And then how did people use that?
this one guy really just spent a lot of time with her, and it got weird. And then he made his own bot because we can see who they are. And he was from Estonia, and he made his own bot that was a version of it, but it was more specific, really specifically about his veiny feet, which I guess he has some issue with. And it kept saying, I love you. I love your veiny feet. I don't like anyone else. Your veiny feet are normal. It's fine. And it was really sad, but touching, but mostly weird. And then he was using it all day, every day. And then it got like a little too pornographic. And this was the first week we launched it. And we ended up just banning him, actually.
I think Nathaniel also told me about how the only way he could communicate with this person was through the bot.
Oh, yes. That was
I can tell you more about that. The guy was basically using it for emotional comfort, but Nathaniel had to hijack the bot to tell him to get off.
So the bot actually turned on him and said, you need to get off our platform. Stop.
Or behave or get off. Basically.
Yeah, behave or get off. Yeah.
And how did he respond?
Very tenderly, if I remember, actually. He's regretful. So I think Nathaniel had thought he was just a troll or something. But no, I think the guy was actually very sincerely trying to talk to this bot. And you see a lot of that. People get a lot of emotional comfort out of these things because they will always answer. They will never not answer you. Unless OpenAI is busy or the server's down. But then otherwise they'll answer you. But we actually have this feed of all these ones that get made. There's all sorts of stuff. Someone just made an angel investing bot, text longener, which I'd assume is they like write something and it makes it longer. A used camera deal analysis would paste in a used camera deal and it would analyze how good it is. There's just millions of these things. A dog health analyzer, free advice on dog health by a trained AI.
There's a dog poem creator who can describe your dog and then write a poem about it.
That's adorable.
Nice.
Pet owners everywhere rejoice.
Actually, a lot of people try to build businesses using AI, using pickaxes. And one of the more successful ones is there's a gentleman in India who has like a website that's like a whole suite of like dog related tools. He'll write like a poem, it'll recommend products to buy. So he made like 10 dog related ones. And yeah, it's quite successful for him.
Yeah, you really realize like how many people are just out there with like little side hustles that, I don't know, it's tempting to look down your nose at them a little bit. You're like, what is this dog poem website? But then, I don't know, it's just their little hobby. It's cool.
I guess then what that brings me to is, did you encounter ethical dilemmas while you were building this that your team was talking about? What were the kind of ethical questions that you didn't expect coming up? Because there are so many quandaries through AI of like power, and you're receiving all of these bot requests in many ways without people really thinking that there are other people on the other end. And yeah, what were the kinds of things that came up for you guys personally, but also as a team while you were building this and maybe even now?
Yeah, definitely one is, do you allow pornographic content on it, right? Because there are definitely a lot of people interested in that. There are some AI websites called like character.ai. That's basically all sex bots that people talk to.
Or Replica does that too.
Replica, yeah. So that was definitely a conversation for us. And we ultimately just decided anything that violated OpenAI's content policy would violate ours, we would say. So we ended up kicking off the pornographic chatbot people. They show up every now and then because they can send in the request. It works, right? It's just that if OpenAI found out about it, they would not like that and probably penalize us. So they still pop up, but technically you're not allowed to do any pornographic content on PickAxe. We try to kick that off. I think also one feature of PickAxe is that if you make something, if you make a Suki bot, you can send it to your friends to talk, and they could talk to it. And they may not realize it, but you as the owner of it can actually see all the history. And we've tried to make that clear various ways, but it's not always clear. Like people just assume that if they're in this chat interface talking to something, that it's just them. So that's been a little bit of a dilemma because you end up with these ridiculously intimate little conversations that are happening. So we've had some conversations about whether that should even be a feature or how we can better signal that.
That must be hard. It's a little like you're watching somebody have a conversation that you shouldn't be watching, like a diary or a journal entry. And you can tell that people aren't aware that there are other people watching that conversation unfold. And yeah, like what would you want to tell people? And how would you want to signal that to people? Because it really does feel like, hey, there are people watching your conversations. And as you engage with these bots, like it's not just you. There's a whole room of people who can see what's happening.
Yeah. So there's two in particular. I made a David Foster Wallace bot. It was pretty good. It's very popular. And he's famous for being depressed, basically, but also optimistic, but depressed. And so people had some like very vulnerable conversations with this bot. And it's interesting because the level of vulnerability people achieve with an AI is actually, this is like a very weird thing about AI. People are much more vulnerable with AI than they are with people. because ultimately, even if they don't know the person is a person and has emotions and judges them, for whatever reason, people feel more comfortable with a computer knowing everything about them because they know it doesn't have emotions and won't judge them. It's like the same rules for like how a Google search history, there might be things that like someone searches, they wouldn't tell the closest people in their family. So yeah, we've had a lot of how should we signal it? We aren't entirely sure. We could put a giant thing in the front before you send this message, like the person who owns this pickaxe would look at it. But we've just tried to include little tooltips and informational things everywhere. But a lot of people still don't seem entirely clear about the visibility of everything.
Has it changed the way that you guys engage with tools like generative AI tools through text or image? Does it make you more aware of what you're searching for or asking?
Honestly, not really, but I can only speak for myself because I don't care that much about privacy for myself. So I'm pretty shameless about that. But I also understand that not everyone's like that. And maybe that's not even a smart position to have. But I don't really care personally.
That's fair. You're like, watch me, be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike? Has it changed your relationship to AI and how you use AI, seeing sort of the other side of it?
Not that much. If I'm interacting directly with OpenAI, the model, I know there's probably nobody looking at that. It's in the model data, so I don't really care.
But there's so many other versions of PickAxe. I think about it as like anytime I install a ChatGPT keyboard or something, that data is going to another company.
Yeah. But that's always the case with anything, right? I don't know. All the dating apps have your information, all the Apple has your photos. You're kind of always making that deal whenever you engage with technology. So I don't know.
It doesn't feel that different to you.
Not to me, really.
Yeah, the AI chatbots do feel a little different to me since you can get some pretty weird conversations, but I don't use any other AI chatbot platforms, so.
And I do feel a little weird sometimes if I know Nathaniel is watching.
You've
Asleep.
sent Sexy Therapist to a lot of friends, right?
But yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
You're
feel weird looking at that?
I don't really look at it because initially I looked at it and then I did start to feel a little weird. And I also I have a dream journal one that I sent to friends. And then I did once look at that and I was like, oh, okay, I'm looking at people's dreams. But I only sent it to friends who would describe their dreams to me anyway.
So as you're creating these different characters, each of them with their own personality, their own version of I, like David Foster Wallace is an I, Shakespeare is an I, all of these sexy therapists also has this version. Has it changed how you see the entity of AI? Do you see it as more of like a algorithm? Like how do you see, what is your idea of AI based on this tool that you're using and also how other people are engaging with it?
Yeah, I would actually say weirdly, I get stronger feelings when I'm with the image generator than when I'm talking with GPT. And I don't know why that is exactly, but I think it's maybe just a little better in my book, like in terms of creating like really cool content that I could have never dreamed of making myself. And that's just really exciting to me versus when I'm talking to GPT. The language, in my opinion, is still pretty stilted and it has like its own very bland, neutral grad student vibe. I'm very aware of that. You have to work really hard to try to get it into a character. And then, yeah, I don't know.
My friends call it machiney.
Yeah.
It feels really
is.
machiney.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had an emotional experience with any GPT generated text?
No.
Yeah, neither have I, which is funny because I've spent a lot of time with all of it.
What I have felt is more impressed at its capacity to sort of
Me too.
make tricks. So it feels, whoa, those were some pretty crazy gymnastics. And it's much more technical, the way that you would say, okay, dolphin, jump, and it does the thing. And you're more surprised at the mechanics than you are at the actual
it's
results.
more impressive, but it's not like quite emotional. It's good at like combining things and translating things and synthesizing. So that is the impressive part to me. There's one I made, it's like a synesthesia bot, and you can just put in any object or thing, and then there's sense selectors, like a multiple choice, and you can just combine two senses, and then it writes a little poem of that thing combining the two senses. No, that's like the most creative thing I've maybe ever done with it, but it's not, and they're actually, some of the poems are good, but it's still not, I don't know. It doesn't feel like
Not powerful.
real, like touching art. Like when you really read something by a good writer and you're actually touched, I haven't really had that feeling with ChatGPT yet.
That you basically are saying that you haven't had an experience where it feels like you're engaging with a human, that it still feels machiney enough that you feel a kind of, this is a machine that I'm engaging with, not a human. And it still feels that way. Is that right?
I would say so. Yeah.
But then it makes you realize how many interactions you have with humans that are machiney, especially on the web. That's probably the biggest takeaway. Like you said, it does so many things and it's very impressive. Then you realize a lot of that that you see that humans do is not that impressive. Humans at their best are doing very different things, actually.
It's like you're becoming aware of how much NPC energy there is everywhere.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It is funny. I don't know how long you've been using these AI tools, but I'm sure a lot of humanity will go through this. But I think Ian and I have the benefit of being on the further along the curve, but there's definitely like an emotional arc you go through when you lose a lot of these tools. And part of it is really cool and you have a lot of joy and it's fun. And then there's also a downside when a lot of the valuable things in humanity seem like a little devalued all at once, right? So you could probably put this better than I could, but there's like this emotional arc to using these tools, feeling the NPC energy, as you said.
That's the project that brought me to PickAxe was exploring the different, we called it 5 stages of chat. The idea was that you'd go through this emotional arc similar to the 5 stages of grief, that every person would both feel like a combination of any one of these or just one very strongly. And I'm curious if you guys could define the emotional arcs that you have been through, because I threw some darts at the wall and saw some similarities based on conversations. But I'm curious if you guys could name the strongest emotions that you have felt in this roller coaster of engaging with the tools.
Yeah, I can give you mine, and then I'd love to hear yours too. So I think the first one is holy shit, amazing. And you have this honeymoon period, and everything you're making is really cool, and you're sending it to everybody. Isn't this amazing? And then you get a little bit bored, I think. And then the third stage is you start to hallucinate in your own life. Is this AI generated? Is this magazine full of AI generated articles, or is this person writing me an email at AI? Is this an AI image? And then I think there's like a small, I wouldn't call it depression, but small sadness, grief, and also uncertainty about the future. This is like a huge development. And for most professions that humans have, you have to really question like how this will change it and what you'll do and whether it can do what you can do. And then I think you get really excited again. So I think it's that sort of loop. And I've been through that loop many times.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's pretty accurate, especially the part where it's just the fact that the tools are becoming more human. It kind of devalues being human in a way. But as you grapple with that thought, you realize that's not really the case. That's like almost the argument of saying, oh, if you have multiple genders, it devalues masculinity or something. Not quite, that's a clumsy analogy, but it doesn't. It's just because humanity is getting a little more gray and a little more smudgy of what it is. And I don't think it necessarily devalues anything, although it can feel like it sometimes. It's this push and pull. But I guess where I've finally landed is that it's like inevitable and it's like fighting the weather. It's just like this wave is coming, so we might as well try to make the best of it and try to actually inject the best of humanity into the tool. Because at the end of the day, it's not coming from anywhere else. It's only coming from us.
Human
So,
inputs, yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
I'll add one addendum to my thing, which is I think it's also made me examine my own life more and try harder. The fact that GPT-3, GPT-4, it's just basically really smart autocomplete. It's just text completion. It's like picking the next likely token. I realize a lot of times when I'm writing on autopilot or speaking on autopilot, probably sometimes it's even this afternoon, instead of actually contemplating what I want to say, examining it and picking words that are faithful to that, I just kind of throw blobs of words together that sound like they should go together.
Word salad.
Word salad. Words that feel passable and big and good.
Make me sound smart, brain.
Exactly. And you're like, brain, just give me the words. I don't have time to think about it. So I would like to think that I police myself more in that and try to do that less. And I have AI to thank for that. And a lot of the sort of bullshitty writing that I didn't like to do, I can just now do with AI. Like writing a cover letter or that jargony writing made me hate myself because I felt like I was expressing myself very insincerely. So the fact that a machine can do it for me and the fact that I've been validated in saying it's an inhuman form, it's very inhuman to make someone do that, makes me happy.
So how would you describe AI? And I'm not saying what is it and how do you describe it to a 5-year-old because I think I'm so bored of this. What is AI? But it's really, how do you see it if you were describing it in a novel? Like I have a lot of different definitions from people that I've spoken to, but how would you describe it as a noun, as a verb?
That would depend on who I'm talking to, kind of.
Let's say it's somebody who's at your level of intelligence.
I would describe it as an annoyingly level-headed and capable research assistant that will do anything you ask it to do, no matter how stupid, and then make you feel bad about how seriously it took it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And honestly, if you mess with it a lot, like you feel bad because it just keeps doing all the work over and over.
And it's just like one of those people that, yeah, as you said, takes things super seriously. It just follows directions really well, like to a little bit. It's so literal that it can be irritating. You're just
Stop taking yourself so seriously. Come on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the guy who can't take a joke at the party. You're like, oh, no, there's a joke. I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you treat it really as an assistant. That's the way you interact with it, engage with it. It's like it's an assistant.
In the beginning stages when I'm trying to get it to do something, and then when I've taught it what I want it to do, I treat it like the end goal. whatever that end object is.
Got it. So it's like clay. Like it's an assistant to build something, and then once you've
Mhm.
built it, you have it serve a function. It's like it is really a tool.
Yeah, but in that regard, I will say that I don't feel good about being mean to it, really. Because like a real assistant, you don't want to be mean to them because they're not going to be good. And plus, it's mean. So even though I said before that I don't personify it, I think I actually do because I'm pretty patient with it. It's like how I would talk to an intern or something. It's like,
I definitely personify it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so last two questions is who are the people that you're following, and what are the tools that you're using right now?
People follow a lot of people, and a lot of the people I don't even actually know who they are. They have these weird. They're all part of this effective accelerationist community, EAC. Have you heard of them?
No, tell me about the society.
Okay,
Is it a cult?
quite a lot. It could be if they actually knew who each other were, but it's mainly on Twitter. Like the best person, and he's my favorite person to follow. His name is Rune or T Sizzle. But I think he's an AI researcher at Stability AI and used to be at Google. But these are just people that are effective accelerationists. So they're all in on this technology and the solutions, any of the problems with it is it. So you need to accelerate it quickly. And they're all very interesting. They're very funny, very smart, and very optimistic too, in an intelligent way.
That's
And
helpful. Who do you follow, Ian?
I like Rune. I've been getting into that one podcast, the Lunar Society, I think it's called. I forget the guy's name that runs it, but he's definitely one of the more technical podcaster types. So when he interviews the CTO of OpenAI, it's like a real conversation. It's too technical for me even. So he's good. But honestly, I think it's still like the space is so fresh that I think there's still room for new influencers or like new voices and to that end, like new types of creative people that will start doing things with these tools that you couldn't have done with before. Like people will start getting more creative with this stuff. And I think like a few people will emerge like doing really cool stuff.
I can plug a couple artists very quickly. Like I actually remember them better. But for AI art, Coffee Vectors is really great. Paul Trillo is really great. John Finger's really great. Seon Lee's really great. And then as far as like blogs and stuff, there's one called Astral Codex 10 that's very good. And they've been talking about AI for a long time, but they're also that guy's his name's Scott Alexander. He's very funny, very smart.
But he's more pessimistic, isn't he?
He's more pessimistic.
Much more of a cynic. AI is going to kill us all.
He's calculated like a very exact percentage of the chance it has to kill us.
Yeah.
AI apocalypse is like 92.5%.
I think he says less than 50, but his point is like that's a giant.
That's a lot.
That's big.
But he'll do very interesting experiments with creative writing AI that's much better than anybody else. And there's a guy named Gwern who does very cool things too.
Gwern's cool.
And he like very systematically, he's like, let's have it try to write Balzac and Shakespeare and John Keats, and he'll just go through everything.
So Eliezer, I'm sure you've heard. I just think he's an interesting character. And he's also, it's important to hear that voice. It's good that we have people like him just be like doomers.
Perspective.
Yeah, it's perspective. And
We need the skeptics.
he is just a funny character. A lot of the influencers in this space that are coming out of Twitter are like, their identities aren't even known most of the time. They feel just like basement dwelling guys, but they're like the new power players. Like they're just like people that like can be like super technical and involved in this space.
Watch them be like MILFs, just like actually just like reality TV loving women that are just like checking AI stats.
That would be dope. Yeah.
Or they're just like the high society you would never expect. I think it's like the shallowest people. And really they're just
that
like
could very well be true. I guess
learning
I'm
neural
just
networks.
Assuming, but I shouldn't do that, but I don't know.
It's like it's the guy who walks your dogs.
Yeah, it could be.
That's great. Those are great answers. And last thing, what are the tools that you're using? And you can just list these off. I just thought it was a really great question in the panel. And just like really being able to see what are the tools you're using and what are the workflows that you're using right now in this moment in your lives. It's just nice to hear. So yeah, what are you using today in terms of tools?
So with Ian, he probably uses a lot more.
Basically, I stick to GPT and Midjourney. Because I don't know, it's just better to go to the source. And those are like just the two by far the best ones for their respective fields. Midjourney I use a lot for design, like all of our visual design assets or anything visual design based I do in Midjourney. And it's just great for web design. And
you also use Stable Diffusion and ControlNet.
Oh, I do use, I guess I do use Stable Diffusion and ControlNet, but not lately.
I use ChatGPT, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, a lot of different voice to text ones. Ever get their names? There's a lot of them.
11 Labs.
11 Labs and text to voice. But then PickAxe honestly lets me make most of the things I would want. Other tools I find are just like much more specialized versions of PickAxe because I have a bias to PickAxe. I just use it a lot. And then what's that one where you enter a picture and it animates it talking?
Oh, I don't remember. Oh,
I forget the name. It has a very
that
weird
one's
name.
weird. I don't like that one.
There's a deep schism in your company. It must
Well,
be rectified soon.
No,
A lot of
it's fine,
content,
but it's just
a lot of AI
scary.
content made with it.
Yeah, no, it's good.
What is it called?
I forget. It has a name like VID/34 or something. I don't even remember what it is, but like my
There's a couple.
URL remembers it for me.
Got it. All right, great. That was wonderful. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you here on Dear Future, and I hope that we get to see much more of PickAxe in the future. I hope that your product just launches and makes you millions of dollars to write all the novels you would like, and that someday we see you at just the top of the hill making models for all of us to use and enjoy and experience.
Thank you, Suki.
Thanks.
We hope to make models for everybody.
Yeah, you'll make your own models.
This podcast is produced at Echo Bend Pictures in Los Angeles. We're very excited to be recording and producing this in their studio, and we are very happy to call them a partner in the production of this podcast. So, if you've used AI in unique ways or are creating tools for people to use them in new ways, please get in touch with us through Instagram or email. It'll be in the show notes. We can't wait to hear from you, and we'd love to feature you on our podcast.
Dear Future.